Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Equine Episode Examination, where today we'll be talking about the newest Season 7 MLP episode, Health of Information, for a Fluttershy episode, yay. So, if this is your first time watching us, we're just, like I said, we're going to discuss the episode. We're all going to give our opinions on it and have a discussion of said opinions, both here in the voice chat as well as in the text chat as well. If you are watching a recording of this and would like to participate in the discussion, we do record these live most weeks on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I will say that next week it will not be on Tuesday. It's either going to be on Monday or Wednesday. We'll announce that at a later date, but usually we will record these on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. over on CinemaQuestria.com. If you happen to be watching this somewhere else and want to participate in the discussion now, you can head on over to CinemaQuestria.com/stream and enter our Discord chat there, and you will be able to participate in the discussion. So with that all out of the way, I'm Rain Shadow, if everyone else wants to introduce themselves here.
Hey, it's Mr. Ben.
This is Jay Smith.
And I'm that person buzzing around your ear.
Not as much as Ben's mic earlier. He was doing all the buzzing.
He's mad at the flash bang, man.
Better say, so long as it's not doing that now, I'm okay with that. So
it sounds perfect. There. So yeah, with all that out of the way, health of information. What was everyone's initial thoughts on the episode?
I'm just upset that I wasn't able to watch it with you guys last Saturday because my laptop was just kind of going nuts and was being a bad boy and needed a good spanking.
Oh my!
But it is now behaving perfectly normal.
This is a G-rated show.
Yeah,
Mr. Ben.
Well, it needed to be punished. The hard drive was basically shot and it needed to be completely replaced. So, yeah. But it's back up and running. It's working back to normal now. So, anyhow, getting back on topic, this was actually a good episode. I'm kind of surprised we got a little bit of interaction between Fluttershy and Zecora, especially with a big introducing, not really let me try to rephrase what I'm saying here. It's kind of interesting. We never really see Zecora interact much with the main cast outside of Twilight, even that much. So seeing some interaction between Zecora and Fluttershy, or any sort of interaction between any of the other main characters, is actually really nice to see.
Yeah, it's two Zecora episodes where she played it wasn't just like a cameo appearance or something in a row, which was pretty big, especially after not seeing her for so long.
They remembered she existed.
Yay!
Also, it makes perfect sense for Fluttershy and Zecora to have I would have thought they would at least interact more than, say, she would interact with Fluttershy more than most other members of the main six, just because of the fact that she probably lives the nearest in proximity to Zecora's home.
Yeah. And yeah, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was great. It was a lot funnier. It's weird because it was both really funny and at the same time kind of dark in terms of what was actually going on with this disease and stuff. But at the same time, it was also just like had a lot of humor in it, like a lot of humor in it. It was more or less Fluttershy's Applebuck season in terms of sort of what she was going through and sort of the fault or the problem she was having in the episode that she had to kind of learn a lesson about in the end was very similar to Applebuck season in that respect. So yeah, it was obviously a lot of humor relating to that, just like Applebuck season had. So yeah, we'll go ahead.
Yeah, so move aside. I'm sorry, Punk Rarity. Move aside. Fluttershy's back in the lead role. But yeah, I mean, for a Fluttershy episode, what I love about this episode that was based, once again, it's another one based not around her confidence, but other things. I mean, we actually see how incredibly steadfast Fluttershy is to the task of curing Zecora, to the point that she she basically loses all grip of reality of having to sleep or eat or anything really, and it let's just say it has a slightly detrimental effect on Fluttershy's performance.
It's kind of like that episode, Putting Your Hoof Down, where like Fluttershy's assertiveness goes a little overboard, and not in the good way.
Sort of. I think the thing is, though, she's also trying to. She feels that she's responsible, which to an extent she is, but ultimately, I feel that as Zecora says, you shouldn't dwell on the past, and also you've got to remember Zecora was more than happy to help Fluttershy in the first place. So, it's like, as they say, it's one of those things. But that thing being a deadly disease that can turn you into a tree and essentially kill you, for kids.
So let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and move into the writing and story aspect of the show here. So this episode was the second episode written by Sammy Crowley and Whitney Weta, who previously had written Flurry of Emotions all the way back at the beginning of the season, and have written episodes for the Loud House as well previously. I was surprised. I wasn't really expecting this to be a kind of a legend episode. This would be like the third one this season that dealt with some sort of legend. We of course had the Campfire Tales episode a little bit ago, and then we had the Daring Done episode, which dealt with the legend in that episode as well. And now we have this Meadowbrook legend in this one, and they all kind of deal with the same thing, where they have like a little story and a little 2 to 3 minute little story segment about the legend in it, and then sort of base the rest of the episode around it. So definitely getting a little like a theming vibe from the second half of the season here.
Damn, all these leg ends. When are we going to get any thighs?
Huh.
Hmm.
Test.
Yes.
Hello.
Ah, okay. The app's just going really all derpy on me. But the episode in general, we moved on now.
Hmm?
We're on writing.
Ah, okay. So I think the up for me, so that's fun. But yeah, you've mentioned that it was Sammy and Whitney, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is only their second episode that they've written for the show.
Yep. Previous one being Flurry of Emotions.
They got everything really nailed down, like from like obviously the characters that were in the episode, all the little callbacks to even little details like Fluttershy's little excited squeaking noise. It's fantastic, and it shows that when they bring these new writers on, they really do their homework when they are actually writing for this show. And honestly, if you'd have told me that this was written by an experienced writer from seasons 2 or whenever, I'd have believed you. And I think that's the real key thing about you know, a lot of these new writers this season, they've pretty much, you know, hit the ground running almost sort of pretty much immediately, which, you know, is still very impressive. And, you know, Sammy and Whitney, I think, with the Loud House, I think there is a lot of compatibility with them being excellent, both of them being excellent slice of life shows. So I suppose really it should be no surprise that you know, they fitted in really well writing for this show as well.
Another interesting thing is much like the previous Legend episode, Daring Done, this was another episode which really had a very similar formula to the map episodes, but wasn't a map episode, where it dealt with two characters specifically. This one being Twilight and Fluttershy, going to a, you know, a far away or unexplored location, at least for the show. And of course, this one, it wouldn't have really, unlike Daring Done, where maybe you could have made it work, this one, of course, wouldn't have worked as a map episode, since it really didn't involve a friendship problem. But it is still kind of a very similar format in that aspect, which is great in my opinion, because I love the map format episodes where you just get two characters that you're going to be focusing on, rather than trying to throw in all of the main six, because you get a lot more focus on those two characters, and I did enjoy that about this episode.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Sunset is Magic there. There is a slight difference here in that, you know, I'd say Fluttershy was was sort of, you know, the main focal point here. But it's not to say Twilight didn't play an important role in the episode, though. And, you know, it is interesting to see Twilight here being a lot more of an anchor and basically a sort of, you know, the voice of reason to Fluttershy. But what's more interesting, I find, in this episode is how much Fluttershy obviously stands up for herself here, and the fact that, you know, Twilight actually backs down. If you think, how often does anyone really back down from Fluttershy? I mean, I know that's because of Fluttershy's assertiveness here, but it's yet another thing that you just don't see a great deal of, or at least we've not seen a great deal of since the show started. And I think it's a real, you know, it really shows how much Fluttershy has evolved and changed as the show has moved on.
Yeah, so we also get to see, like I mentioned before, we also get to see a new location, Hayseed Swamp, in here, which is fun. Always fun to visit a new location. Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone's speaking right now.
I'm just looking up something here. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was what I was looking up. I was looking up what Tim was saying in chat room. I hadn't studied Eastern unicorns as much, but pretty sure Meadowbrook only had 8 magical items, not 9. And I was gonna make a point that Starlight was like feeding some horse apples to the main staff. That Meadowbrook made this sort of staff of sameness, but it was pretty much stated pretty much outright in the episode itself that yeah, Twilight kind of knew that. So, whoops.
Ooh.
Ow. Not fun.
Yeah, that was an interesting thought there for a second, but being where you thought that Starlight was just name dropping each Brooke as a lie or something, but because that would self-fix the continuity problem.
Anything else for writing, or we want to move on to characters?
Yeah, I really can't think of anything.
Okay, so moving on to characters and characterization in the episode. Like I mentioned before, it's 2 episodes with Zecora in a row, which is unusual, but nice to see more of her in the episode.
So yeah, Zecora is actually really nice to see in this one. I love how we get to see a little bit more of her. Even though she really didn't have that big of a part, I mean, she was helping Fluttershy gather the crisscross moss, and then she winds up getting sick, and then she's bedridden for pretty much the rest of the episode. But it's kind of interesting to note that apparently Zecora's rhyming apparently may not be totally natural. She it just does it so much that she just kind of does it on a whim. But then when she's sick, she can't focus on making a rhyme. Yeah.
Ugh, hopefully this calms it down. Oh shit.
unless it started again.
It was having, I believe we mentioned this earlier, it was nice having a Fluttershy episode where it's sort of like how the Spike episode was back in last season with the Call into Fire episode, where it was nice seeing an episode where he was pretty much in charge of the situation. It wasn't really about him dealing with something or messing up or anything like that. It was nice just having an episode where she was kind of in charge of the situation, even though obviously she was a little too ambitious about it, which sort of winds up being the lesson in the end. But it wasn't an episode where she's dealing with shyness or timidness in any way, shape, or form. It was just she made a mistake and obviously has a lot of concern for her friend and is going sort of out of her way and pushing her envelope in order to help, her friend and eventually herself and whatnot recover from the illness. And it was nice seeing her being so determined to help her friends. Actually, you get to see a little bit of like Twilight rubbing off on Fluttershy a little bit as well when she's doing out of her way to do that research.
Loved how Fluttershy managed to out Twilight. Twilight was actually getting to the point, like, we might actually have some better chance just getting some rest and trying again in the morning, and Fluttershy just powers through the night just without rest at all.
Also get Dr. Horse makes an appearance in the episode. He's actually named. I think this is the first time he's actually been named in the show. I think Dr. Horse is a fan name for him.
I think he was named in the credits. I don't think he was actually name dropped in the actual episode as well. He was just referred to as Doctor.
But yeah, I mean, it's the first time he's been named in the show. Because his last appearance, they didn't name guest voice actors in the credits at all. So.
Yeah, we're taken care of now, Matt.
Oh, I feel a bit woozy though. I think I'm back.
You need to lay down. Go ahead.
I'm not good with nosebleeds. Yeah, this is not working. I'm gonna have to leave the chat. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Hey, not a problem. Take care of yourself, man.
What did everyone think about Twilight in the episode?
She's pretty much just the same as she normally is. She's. I love how at one point we kind of got a situation in the episode where they were going over Meadowbrook's journals, and it's kind of funny because the fandom kind of tends to portray as Twilight as a bit of a shipping person, and there's a point where they were going over her journals, and it's like, one day this boy pulled my mane, so I put a frog in his head. And then Twilight replies like, also not helpful, but I kind of want to see where this goes. And the fact that we got to see Twilight trying to cook for once, or at least do some baking, that chef hat on her head was just cute as hell. And she's also apparently pretty good at it, as if Spike's message was any indication.
Giving the derping really put him to the test.
And of course, we had the new character Cattail as well in there. Another new character in addition to Meadowbrook and her mother in the flashback.
We've seen that sort of body style before on Cattail. I think we've seen it on Big Daddy McColt and Saffron Masala's father, if I'm not mistaken.
And the puppet guy.
Yeah, the puppet dude, yeah.
I think that was the first time we saw that body style.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really so much they're finding it hard more than, wanting to maybe focus on other things. We've had a few Twilight episodes this season, though. Anything else anyone wants to discuss for the characters or the writing? I think I've seen someone complain about that for every episode ever made. It just seems to be the standard. It was nice having another sort of, legend scene or storybook kind of legend thing. It's kind of interested to see where they might be going with it, being that it's, being that we've had quite a few this season. They seem to be, and of course, with all the comic tie-ins as well. Yeah, I think overall, I mean, I liked the characterization of Fluttershy in it, and it was kind of, again, nice to have Twilight there as sort of the fallback in it. Very similar to, like I said, it's very similar in a lot of ways to Applebuck season, because this sort of the same thing happened there. Obviously, the main plot of the story itself is a lot different. It isn't like it was a carbon copy of it, but the sort of problem of it, and Twilight being there as sort of the fallback was very much similar to Applebuck season in that respect. You could probably make the argument that the lesson is kind of like already done in that respect as well. Like, we've already sort of learned this lesson in the show. And I know some people don't really like when lessons repeat, but I mean, in the very sense of it, the core of the story itself and what happened and what we learned was very much, and sort of what the problem was caused by, was very different from Applebuck season in that respect. So at the very least, the ride to get to that lesson was enjoyable and more original. Yeah, it had some minute differences, but it you know, the main core of the message was not pushing yourself so hard and not getting sleep. I mean, both Fluttershy and Applejack were really pushing themselves so hard because of how much they wanted to help. For it, with Applejack, of course, it was more just a genuine wanting to help in general. With Fluttershy, it was more than sort of trying to help and make up for something that she felt that she caused. I mean, it wasn't exactly the same, but it was pretty similar in that respect. But like I said, the sort of rest of the episode that revolves around that was much different. Moving on to the voice acting in this episode. What did everyone think of the episode's voice acting?
Say, Andrea Lidman and Tara Strong always bring their A game, but that's always because they they always do that. Let's see who we had here. Doran Bell was Cattail, and he was always he was pretty good for the Meadowbrook's descendant on there. And yeah, Zeccora's voice actor somehow got a new voice.
And she was the voice of the mother, I believe, right?
Yep, Meadowbrook's mother. Meadow Mother, if you will.
Oh, God.
or Mother Brook?
Mother Brook?
Yeah, Mother Brook sounds better. Let's say return of Brian Drummond as Dr. Horse.
I will say that that the Doran Bell actually voiced Trenderhoof in season 4 as well. So this is his first foray into Pony. Everyone's favorite waifu stealer. Next to the Flash Bees, of course. Brian Drummond reprised his role as Dr. Horse from season 2, which I believe is the last time he spoke. We've seen him a few times since then, but not in a speaking role. Not to be confused with the other Dr. Horse, who's also in the show, but is spelled out Doctor instead of DR, just to confuse some things. And Meadowbrook herself was voiced by Marie Devereux, who's done some voice acting for the past 4 years here, and some Barbie stuff, and and some other animation.
So is this her first voice actor on or voice credit on the show?
On this show, yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, the whole episode and the setting and Hayseed Swamp sort of had like a Louisiana sort of bayou swamp, southern swampland feel, both in the look and the music and the voice acting as well. Just waiting for a few people to type before we move on to humor. I really did like Andrea with Fluttershy, though. Just, again, showing a lot more emotion than we're normally used to seeing Fluttershy have, but still kind of keep that timid Fluttershy voice without... I don't think it really ever got into, like, Pinkie Pie territory. She was able to keep it separate from that, even though there were times when Fluttershy was getting excited or angry or frustrated in the episode as well.
So yeah, I don't think we've heard anything of that nature, at least in this episode anyway.
Well, I guess it's just something that we don't really know much about in terms of the history of migrations and where, where different things come from for it. I think a lot of it is just the show obviously feeds off a lot of real world settings and locations and cultures for it. So it's, it's something the show always has, and it always has had, but it doesn't always explain. That's true, Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben, you do make a good point there, though, about Southern Equestria and its close relation to Egypt that we saw in the previous Legend episode there, Daring John. That's actually a really good observation. So, moving on to humor, like I mentioned, this episode did have a lot of sort of darker undertones with the swamp fever and sort of the repercussions that it has. But at the same time, it had a lot of humor. Again, a lot of it stemming from Fluttershy and sort of her whole sort of Applejack and Applebuck season sleep deprivation that she had in that episode. So. So a lot of humor. So what did everyone think about the humor in the episode?
I love how when the doctor was, listening to Zekora's heartbeat, he somehow hears like a jazzy drum solo of some sort.
Yeah, that's a classic cartoony joke there.
She has the heart of jazz.
Say Fluttershy revenge upon the disease spreading flower. I can't believe a flower did this. I take back thinking it was pretty.
Oh yeah. And they when Twilight wakes up and she's like, non-stick pens.
And she's even just kind of was measuring 9 by 13 inch like beforehand as well.
Yeah, there's so much that I didn't actually write down here that I missed when I was watching it and taking notes, just because there is quite a bit of humor and visual gags in here.
I love how in Fluttershy's sleep-deprived state, she slams into the door, she can't open it, and she decides the next logical course of action is to dig underneath the door to try to get inside. It reminds me of that Twitter thing that I see. It's like, when you push a pull door and the person behind you says, you need to pull a ice cheer, lad. Sure, next plan was to start lifting from the bottom. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Twilight and Fluttershy are just searching for the cure, and Twilight mentions she finds that journal says, I met a colt today. He pulled a mane, so I put a frog in his head. Also not helpful, though I kind of want to see where it goes. And then Fluttershy is just like, no, not important. She just kind of shoves another journal in Twilight's face. Just the very fact that Fluttershy outlasted and outperformed Twilight on a book hunt and research session as well. Like I mentioned, she just out-Twilight.
I really like Fluttershy's reaction when she walks in on Twilight cooking. She's like, are you cooking? Like, this is something abnormal for Twilight.
Well, I mean, we've never seen her do it before, so
Yeah.
Fluttershy's surprise is not unwarranted here. Then as dire as the situation is becoming, it was, Zecora struggling to do her signature rhyming. Oh no, Zecora, you didn't rhyme. You must be getting worse. Oh no, not at all. Something ball.
It's the first time we haven't actually heard Zecora rhyme in her dialogue.
Fluttershy, this is the second time, I believe, that Fluttershy's stare just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
On a nest of very highly aggressive bees, no less. And discovers very painfully that...
when was the last time her stare didn't work?
Discord, I think. She tried it on Discord.
It was on Discord. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember if there's another time or not.
I believe it was the only other time that her stare failed.
Okay.
She tried it on Skype too, and it worked. Then yes, of course Skype, because that freaking instant messenger program just always not working. Just stare at it.
I really like the introduction of when to the disease when the doctor said swamp fever, and it's that really low voice and all the echo and reverb behind it,
and that thunder and lightning in the background.
Yeah. And also he has a great bedside manner. Like when he walked away, he's like, "I'm sorry, Zecora. I know it's a lot to take in. I'll leave you two to discuss." Dun, dun, dun.
Boink.
I also really like Twilight's line, any pony who lives in a tree is fine by me. believe Matt pointed this out earlier as well, but Twilight actually like pointing out Fluttershy's high-pitched squeaky noise, thinking that she was making it in that one scene.
Yes, the squee noise.
Yeah. And of course, Twilight's reaction to the library there in Middlebrooks Place. She got, so it's library, now we're talking. Oh, well, libraries come in all shapes and sizes. It's not the size of your library, it's how you use it. I also really like sort of the sleep-deprived Fluttershy. She was almost getting close to Discord at Fluttershy, both in color and attitude at some points. I really liked her response to Cattail, where she's like, "You don't know this about me, but I'm pretty good with animals."
Yeah. Now look here, Dogtail, Cattail, Cattail.
Anything else for humor that anyone wants to point out?
That joke at the very end of the episode where Dr. Horse ended up catching disease.
Yeah, he comes in with the limbs growing out of his ears and everything. Oh, on that note, was one of the things I wanted to point out for the visuals. Like the bubbles out there kind of go through and exit out of the iris out at the end there, so they kind of, the iris out goes in to black, but the bubbles kind of escape it and pop then over the black. It was a nice little touch. I love like playing with the iris outs like that. Fluttershy, stop walking into the door. Just over and over. Also, Twilight's burnt hair there. That must have smelled horrible. I'm glad it magicked. I'm glad the magic of cartoons made it be okay in the next scene. There's a lot of funny like faces, especially with Fluttershy throughout. Like the one at the very end where she takes off the bee mask and is like, "It's working." And I've seen a couple other ones posted here already, like the derpy Twilight look when she wakes up.
Say DMTL makes a good point here. I'm kind of curious exactly what Cattail did when he mentioned, he's like, some things I don't want to mention.
He tried to seduce the bees.
Oh my.
With disastrous effects.
She tried to seduce the bees using Fluttershy's bee suit. Crazy episode.
We just need to recreate the not the bees scene, but with cattail. Hey, that's what happened. But of course, it was also really nice, visual-wise, to see another location outside, that we haven't seen before in the show, and that always involves some background work on creating that new location. So it was nice to see a little swampy area in that aspect, that we hadn't really seen that exact kind of area before in it. And the backgrounds and location backgrounds really continue to shine. Again, the Zikora's home looks really, really great on the outside now, and we've already, in previous episodes a couple seasons ago, when we saw Zikora's house there, we already kind of did a comparison between how it looked in Fluttershy's as well, how it looked in like earlier seasons to how it's looked like season 5 onward. A lot more detail and beauty in the backgrounds there. So we see that again with Fluttershy and Zikora's homes, but then of course also in Meadowbrook's place and her tree, a lot of detail, and it looks really good. They really upped the detail since season 5 in the backgrounds. Excited Fluttershy kind of creeps me out. It takes a lot to get her excited, so. Okay, moving on to the music in the episode. This is very similar to a lot of the other Legend episodes we've got so far, where we get some like different new style of score in it, and a nice like 2.5 to 3 minute long Legend scene as well that's backed with some really good score. We got it 3 of them, of course, in the Campfire Tales. Daring Dunn had some really great music for Sonambula, and there where she had that very Egyptian style score there, and of course, this one we got this very like deep south bayou kind of score that we got in terms of the instrumentation. In this one here, a lot of like accordion and guitar and like really hard piano, almost harpsichord in terms of how it sounds, and it to kind of emulate the sound of that environment. So we can go ahead and play a few things. First one is when we first hear about the Healer of Legend from Zikora. This is before Fluttershy goes and does all that research on it with Twilight and finds out about Meadowbrook. So this is the when Zikora first mentions this, and I believe this is our first like taste of the style of music that this episode is going to go into as it continues, and we get to the new location. Pause. A little Fluttershy leitmotif here. We hear a lot of those in this episode, of course. So I was wrong. This wasn't the one that introduced that style. This one has the more orchestral style as we first hear about that legend. We get a lot of very airy kind of horns, French horns in there when the legend is introduced. We get to that new style there when we get to the introduction of Mage Meadowbrook here, when we first find that book about her in Twilight's library. Okay, we get that little introduction there to this kind of score we'll be hearing in just a little bit more into the episode here. So then we arrive next in Hayseed Swamp, and again we get that style of score again here. Bring in a little bit of that accordion there. And next we're introduced to Cattail, and he gets his own little score piece here that again builds upon that sort of Louisiana southern instrumentation that we've been hearing. A lot more pronounced than we've heard in the previous couple tracks. Gets his own little leitmotif there. That da 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 da. Sort of with that like hard steel guitar there. Very similar to the not exactly the same, but similar in feel to the McColt's score that we had actually heard it earlier this season as well, when Big Daddy McColt made his return. Not as mechanical as that, has a lot more of a southern influence than the Big Daddy McColt one, which is a lot more had a lot more mechanical nature to it to match sort of the McColt's personality as a family. From there, we get to the highlight track of the episode, which is going to be the legend track. So, like I said, just like the previous legend episodes, we do get a nice story about the history of the legend, in this case, Meadowbrook. And again, it clocks in at about 2.5 minutes here, so a longer track, just like the ones we had in Daring Done and the 3 that we had in Campfire Tales a little earlier in the season there. So again, this builds upon that same instrumentation, just like how each of these legends has its own location and its own sort of inspiration for real-world inspiration for that location. and for the characters themselves. This one also has that, and the music, of course, follows suit. So in the Daring Dunham, like the Daring Dun episode, like I mentioned, a lot of Egyptian-inspired music. And this one, of course, has a lot more kind of Southern-inspired score in it here. Again, you got that accordion there in the background. A little bit of harp and stuff mixed into this one as well, as we get to kind of the more mystical stuff. Nice little part here. As we see all of the sick ponies that are coming here. It's very emotional. Then right back to that same style as before there. Now we get to some action score here. It's a little bit different way. It's not kind of like the generic action score that we hear in a lot of episodes, so. Still mixes in that that picked string instrument there as well from the previous part of the track. Bringing us to the end of the legend there. From there we get to Fluttershy first trying to take on the Flash Bees. If I recall correctly, this track here reprises that same action score that we had at the end of the Legend track when Meadowbrook was also taking on the Flash Bees. Like a 7/4 time signature on that there. I always like compositions that are able to break free of like the 4/4 or 3/4 time signatures. Works well for action running tracks like that. And then Fluttershy gets overwhelmed and faints. And then, next she wakes up 3 days later. Some more of that score. For Cattail there. very sort of somber part here is Fluttershy sort of coming to terms with what happened there. So we then come to the final track of the episode. This involves Fluttershy finally being able to take the honey from the flash bees and then delivering that honey to Zecora to heal her here. We get to Zecora. And now this is actually a newer track here. This is sort of a newer lesson theme. Fluttershy themed, lesson themed. We first heard this and last heard this earlier this season at the end of, well, near the end of Fluttershy Leans In, when she was talking about, talking to the rest of her friends and the rest of the main six about building the sanctuary. And that's actually something I forgot to mention earlier in the story. We had they had name dropped the sanctuary as well earlier in the episode, Sweet Feather Sanctuary, which was nice. Again, having that continuity within the season there of these things just didn't go away, and it wasn't just kind of a one-off episode thing. It's nice to hear them sort of come back and be mentioned. And we also have so yeah, we hear that also in the music here as we hear this Fluttershy theme from earlier in the season again. I really like this one. And that takes us to the end of the episode there. So that's the music for it. It's nice. I really like how these Legends episodes each are also having sort of their own feel, both visually but also musically in it. And as we go to these new locations, we're hearing all these kind of new styles of score that we haven't before, which I always like to hear in the show. And we got some of that in Campfire Tales and some more of it in Daring Done. And we got a little bit more of it here with Meadowbrook's Tale as well. So it's nice having more of these Legends episodes. I guess we'll see if there's any more coming this season and what other more stuff they bring audio-wise for it. So moving on, what did everyone think about the episode's theme and moral?
Well, it pretty much was mentioned earlier, I think, but the main theme here is that if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of others either.
Mm-hmm.
Another one could possibly be that being assertive doesn't mean always shooting down what others say. And while it's good to stick to your guns, other times it's good to listen to what others think because they may have a point. But it's the first one. It's mainly just the main one. Just make sure to take care of yourself.
Yep. Can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself.
Gotta look out for number one.
Yeah, I'd say any episode that outright pretty much says the moral at the end is pretty straightforward with it, yeah. So favorite parts of the episode and not favorite parts of the episode from everyone. I did enjoy all the humor. I enjoyed all the antics of between Fluttershy and Twilight and sleep deprived yet still determined Fluttershy. That was enjoyable, and again, I really liked the music, and I liked the continuation of the legends that they're kind of doing this season. The season definitely seems to be having a very obvious sort of arc to it in the second half of the season here. Sort of like how season 4 sort of had an arc throughout. It's interesting that we didn't really discuss any legends in the first half of the season at all, so it seems to just sort of be this last half, maybe setting up for some stuff later in the season there. Yep, that's a good point there, Tim, about the moral there, and sort of showing the negatives about pushing yourself and pushing yourself too hard. It's always good to push yourself, but you gotta do it smartly. Overall feelings, final thoughts, conclusions from everyone?
Like you mentioned, I'm just looking forward to seeing if we're going to be hearing about any new legends in the follow-up episodes, or the upcoming ones. That'll be pretty interesting to see.
Is there anyone else that the comics have covered that we haven't heard of yet in the show?
I don't think so.
I read the first Legends one. I've been meaning to read the rest of them in the series, but I just haven't had time. So, but yeah, I think it's really cool. I totally agree, and I'm interested to see sort of where they're going with this, because to me it seems like they are setting up some stuff for later, in terms of obviously focusing so much all these legends in one season, or even one half of the season here. But it's something that's cool for the show to explore, even just as a world building kind of thing.
See, I always love that we get some more world building, new areas to explore.
Yep. Oh God, I was waiting. I was wondering if someone had made one of those. I couldn't find any on Sunday. I'm glad someone has made one since.
Ah, jeez. Seriously.
Just need to change that to Twilight, and it's all set. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy the episode, and I like these legend episodes. So. I guess with that brings us to the end of this episode of Equine Episode Examination. So, we'll be back next week. Stay tuned. Keep an eye on the announcements channel and our Twitter feed as to what day it is, because I'm not quite sure just yet. But it won't be Tuesday. It'll be either Monday or Wednesday, probably around 5 o'clock again. So, and next week, of course, we'll be discussing this weekend's episode, which for some reason isn't appearing. Gosh, I looked back at my computer here that has the stream up, and I usually look below it to get the episode title, and it isn't appearing there for some reason, so, or else I would have looked beforehand about it. I know it's a CMC episode. Marks and Recreation, yes, of course, the second episode to have a parody title on Parks and Recreation, except I guess the other one got changed at the last second in Season 6, but, yeah, that's the next one. Obviously, a CMC-related episode, another Cutie Mark-related episode. So, interesting to see where we go there. So, hopefully, you'll join us this weekend at 11:30 in the morning, as we'll live chat during it, and then come back next week for for Equine Episode Examination. We'll be talking about it then. So, of course, this weekend, if you haven't heard, CQ Rips is back at like 1:15, I think, on the calendar. And we will be, to celebrate the next week's big My Little Pony movie release here in the US. So we'll be watching another fantastic animated feature from Lionsgate that recently came out, Norm of the North, which is instant classic of animation that everyone needs to see. So we'll be watching that this coming weekend at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time here on CQ Riffs. So make sure you don't want to miss that. So make sure you join us for that there. Yep, and then next week that comes out too. So oh boy. So yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in a bit. Bye bye.
Later, folks.
See ya, everyone.